The greatest race in human history didn't take place on Earth. It took place beyond it. A race where two superpowers fought, not with armies, but with rockets pointed toward the stars. America and the Soviet Union, locked in the Cold War, turned the heavens into their ultimate proving ground. This wasn't just about reaching the moon. It was about ideology, pride, and survival. In 1957, the world was shaken awake. A small, beeping satellite, no bigger than a beach ball, pierced the sky. Sputnik was born, and with it, the space race began. America had believed it led the world in science and technology, but suddenly, the Soviets were first. Just 4 years later, a young Soviet pilot named Yuri Gagarin climbed into a tiny capsule and soared into history. On April 12, 1961, he became the first human to leave Earth and circle the globe. The Soviet Union had seized the lead, and America was left humiliated. In the United States, panic spread. If the Soviets could launch satellites, they could launch weapons. The sky itself no longer felt safe. America had to respond, and it had to respond fast. In 1961, America needed hope. A young president, John F. Kennedy, stepped forward with a vision bold enough to capture the imagination of an anxious nation. On May 25th, before a joint session of Congress, Kennedy declared a challenge that stunned the world. I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth. It was more than a speech. It was a promise, a deadline, a declaration that America would not be second in the race for the future. At the time, the United States had only launched a single astronaut, Alan Shepard, on a short 15-minute suborbital flight. Reaching the moon seemed impossible. But Kennedy's challenge ignited something extraordinary. Scientists, engineers, and dreamers across America rallied under a single banner: NASA. Billions of dollars were poured into research and development. Entire cities transformed into hubs of aerospace innovation. Every failure became a lesson. Every setback fueled determination. Rockets exploded. Prototypes failed. Astronauts faced danger, but the momentum never stopped. This was no longer just a scientific mission. It was about pride, unity, and proving that freedom could achieve what tyranny could not. From classrooms to factories, from Cape Canaveral to Houston, the nation worked as one. The goal was no longer just to catch up. It was to lead, to inspire, and to define the future of humanity. The vision was set, but now came the hard part: turning a dream into reality. The Apollo program was born, a mission unlike anything humanity had ever attempted. It demanded not just rockets, but an entirely new way of thinking about exploration. Step by step, America pushed forward. The Mercury program had put a man into space. The Gemini program tested longer flights, spacewalks, and docking maneuvers, all essential skills for reaching the moon. Each mission was a rehearsal for the greatest act of all, Apollo. Behind the scenes, NASA engineers worked tirelessly. They designed the Saturn V rocket, a tall machine taller than the Statue of Liberty and more powerful than anything built before. It would become the key to reaching the moon. Astronauts trained endlessly, underwater to simulate weightlessness, in desert survival camps in case of crash landings, and in flight simulators that shook them to the core. They were scientists, pilots, and symbols of courage. But progress came with sacrifice. In 1967, tragedy struck when Apollo 1 caught fire during a ground test, killing 3 astronauts, Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee. The nation mourned, and doubts grew. Could the dream survive such a devastating setback? Yet instead of ending the mission, the tragedy fueled resolve. Lessons were learned, designs improved, and safety became paramount. By the late 1960s, the Apollo program was ready. A nation once filled with doubt now carried hope. The path to the moon was clear, though still fraught with risk. The stage was set for humanity's greatest journey. On July 16, 1969, history stood still. Millions gathered around televisions, radios, and newspapers. At Cape Kennedy, the mighty Saturn V stood ready. 3 astronauts, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins, climbed aboard the spacecraft that would carry them to the moon. The countdown began. Engines ignited with a roar that shook the Earth. The Saturn V lifted off, rising higher and higher into the sky, a thunderous symbol of human ambition. For 3 days, Apollo 11 traveled through the silent void of space. Inside, the astronauts floated, gazing out windows at the shrinking Earth and the approaching moon. Then came the moment of truth. On July 20th, Armstrong and Aldrin entered the lunar module, Eagle, while Collins remained in orbit. As the Eagle descended toward the lunar surface, alarms blared in the cabin, computer overload warnings. But Armstrong remained calm, guiding the craft manually. With only seconds of fuel left, he found a safe spot and landed. The words crackled over the radio. "Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed."
Yes, we did it.
Cheers erupted across mission control and around the world. Hours later, humanity held its breath as Neil Armstrong stepped down the ladder.
We're in the final approach.
His boots touched the gray dust of the moon. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. For the first time in history, humans walked on another world. Aldrin soon followed, describing the surface as magnificent desolation. The American flag was planted, experiments were set up, and a plaque was left behind. "We came in peace for all mankind." After 21 hours on the lunar surface, Armstrong and Aldrin returned to the Eagle, then rejoined Collins in orbit. Together, they made the journey home. When they splashed down in the Pacific Ocean on July 24th, the race was over. Humanity had won. The United States had fulfilled Kennedy's promise, and the world would never be the same again. The Apollo 11 mission was not the end. It was the beginning of something far greater. In total, 6 Apollo missions landed on the moon. Astronauts explored craters, collected rocks, and brought home priceless knowledge about our nearest celestial neighbor. But beyond the science, the moon landing carried a legacy that reached every corner of the Earth. It was proof of what humanity could achieve when driven by vision, courage, and unity. The space race had been born from rivalry, fear, and the threat of war. Yet its greatest gift was inspiration. Children looked to the skies and dreamed of becoming astronauts, engineers, and scientists. Nations, once divided by ideology, now shared awe at the same achievement. The technology developed for Apollo changed everyday life. Computers, materials, telecommunications, all accelerated by the push for the moon. But the space race also left questions. Why, after such triumph, did humanity not return to the moon for decades? What does it say about ambition, politics, and the costs of exploration? Today, as new missions prepare to take humans back to the moon and even beyond to Mars, the echoes of Apollo still guide us. The race to the moon was not just about winning. It was about proving that humanity's greatest
Imagine the
frontier
possibilities,
is not
a
on
whole new
Earth,
world.
but among
And
the
challenges,
stars.
but we can overcome
And
them.
so, as we look back
are
at that
making
moment
history
in
here.
1969, we see more than a flag on the moon. We see a reminder of what is possible when humanity dares to dream.